Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. This Shabbat, we are incredibly blessed to have in our midst someone who I am very proud to not only call a leader for the state of Israel, but to call a dear friend, Yisrael Nitzan. I'd like to just read a brief excerpt of his bio for all of you before we invite him up to the front of the bima. In the summer of 2023, Yisrael Nitzan completed his 5-year tenure as Deputy Consul General and Acting Consul General in New York. Yisrael has spent the last 22 years working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel. He has gained expertise in diplomacy, foreign relations, foreign policy, strategic planning, and relationship building. At the consulate, Yisrael Nitzan coordinated the political work, developed and maintained relations with national, state, and local elected officials, as well as community leaders within the 5 states in which the consulate represents. New York was Yisrael Nitzan's 4th foreign posting by the ministry. He previously served at the Israeli embassy in Cairo, Egypt, as the spokesperson from 2002 to 2005, and returning in 2009 as the deputy chief of mission, until an attack during the 2011 Egyptian revolution forced the embassy to evacuate. He remained in Cairo as Israel's last official representative until December of that year. From 2012 until 2015, he served as the Minister Counselor for Political Affairs at the Permanent Mission of Israel to the United Nations, where among his many duties, he spoke before the UN Security Council and oversaw Israeli political engagement policies within the UN system. He then became the director of the Foreign Ministry's UN Political Affairs Department in 2015, serving there until 2018, when he was posted to the consulate here. Yisrael served in the Foreign Ministry in other capacities, such as the Arms Control Department, the Southeast Asia Department, and the Center for Policy Research, focusing on the Islamic world. Born in Netanya in 1975, Yisrael completed his Bachelor of Arts in Middle East History and International Relations at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, which followed his military service. He is fluent in Hebrew, English, and Arabic, and when he's not doing the work of the Jewish people, he enjoys spending his time with his wife, Dasi, and their beautiful 4 children. I will just say on a personal level that since Yisrael Nitzan came to this community as the Deputy Consul General and then Acting Consul General, he has been nothing but a friend to Temple Emanu-El and to me personally. And the friendship that I have been blessed to foster with you and with Dasi is up amongst the most treasured I have. And I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for all that you have done, for all that you do, and all that you will do for our homeland of Israel. It is my great honor and my great pleasure to invite forward my dear friend and our guest speaker for today, Yisrael Nitzan.
My honor. Yes.
So before we begin, Yisrael, we have a special gift for you, which we hope that you wear with pride. This is a kippah that replicates our dome. And we want you to know that A, it's made in Israel, which is very important to us in this congregation. And B, that you should know you always have a home in this congregation and that you should always feel at home with us and always know how appreciative we all are for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course. I want to jump right into things. We're at day 406 of the hostages, 406 of the war. It's an incredibly difficult time. I have a few questions about this moment. Now, you used to be a diplomat. You've since stepped away from that role, and you'll always be a diplomat. I don't know you to be any other way but diplomatic. But I have a few questions related to where we stand today. 1, what does a Gaza dismount look like? 2, the role of the war in the north, as we were told, was to bring the families back to be able to live there. But it seems like there are more rockets than ever before, and we seem further from that goal, even though we have really decimated Hezbollah. What is that going to be looking like? And I have more questions on that front. We'll start with those easy ones for layups.
So maybe I will just open by thanking you, Rabbi Kirshner, and the community for having me today. And your friendship throughout these years. Actually, I spoke here, it was Erev Rosh Hashanah 2018. One of the first things
days,
I did at the consulate was to come to Temple Emanu-El, Erev Rosh Hashanah. This was 2018, and thank you for your friendship throughout these years and everything that you do, and your leadership also, both here and in our region. Okay, maybe usually we hope to give some positive remarks, but this is a difficult period in Israel, and things are very complicated and even very difficult. So let's start with Gaza. The difficult thing to say is that there is no news, and there are no news, and I'm not sure that there is any prospect to any development in the near future, and I will explain. We have 101 hostages, and I think that this is the most important thing, and throughout everything that we're going to say today, 101 hostages need to come back home. We won't be able to be back as a healthy society in the state of Israel, and I think that also in the Jewish people, if 101 people who were kidnapped and taken from their homes are not back. We are in a standstill in Gaza. Nothing is, right now, Sinwar was killed by the IDF. His brother, Muhammad Sinwar, is taking over, slowly, very slowly. He is basically acting as a terrorist on a run, running away from the IDF with very minimal communication with his people. Qatar, we have two mediators, Qatar and Egypt. Qatar basically stepped back, took a step even more than a step back, with saying that when the sides decide to resume the negotiations, they are willing to help. Egypt is the other mediator. The chief of intelligence, who is the main interlocutor for Israel, was replaced recently. So basically, this is where we are. Nothing much is happening. When the main effort by Israel is the military effort, especially in the north, basically to kill as many terrorists as we can. It seems that Hamas does not have an interest to bring back the hostages, or because this is their life insurance. I'm not sure that the government has any real strategy. Usually when you go on a military operation, there should be some kind of a political diplomatic exit strategy. I'm not sure that we have such a strategy today. When there are elements in the government who basically reject the notion of release of Palestinian terrorists in exchange for the hostages. The question of right now, the IDF is basically, we started with the Netzarim corridor that basically cut the Gaza Strip into two. So it started as a corridor, developed into a road, and now it's a strip 7-kilometer width, so 56 square kilometers, that is about 22 square miles of a land controlled by Israel, and other areas that are beginning to be fully controlled by Israel without any real vision of what's next. So these are the very bad news. Lebanon. There is progress on the Lebanese issue, and this is the good news. There are good news, and there is a very important but. So, the Trump administration, the Trump campaign or future administration declared that they want to finish the war in Lebanon before Trump enters the White House. There is a very strong push to reach an agreement, and there are negotiations on specific texts. The idea, the basic, the point here is that I think that all parties have the interest to end this war. Hezbollah was dramatically hit by Israel throughout this war. Iran lost its main asset in the region. The Lebanese state is very weak and want to finish with it. Israel also wants to finish the war in Lebanon because the government wants to bring the people, the citizens in the north back. The heavy burden on the reservists, this is the sometimes second, third, and fourth tour of duty basically now in Lebanon. But there is also what is called the munition economy, that basically we do not have endless, amounts of weapons. So we need to finish this war, and we need to. The goal, or what the IDF was given, the mission was to create the conditions to allow the Israeli communities back to the north. The first line of villages along the border, the first line of Lebanese villages that are basically Hezbollah military outposts is now removed, which is basically prevents the scenario of a Hezbollah invasion into Israel. The IDF is now working on the second line of villages to make it difficult for them to shoot anti-tank missiles into our communities. So it seems that everybody wants to finish this war. It seems that things are moving forward. There is an American push for diplomacy, and here is the but. The but here is that Hezbollah is not happy with the prospects for a solution. Basically, what we're talking about is the implementation of Resolution 1701 that basically clears South Lebanon from demilitarized South Lebanon with the presence only of the Lebanese armed forces in South Lebanon, with a stronger international presence and a stronger international monitoring. Today, Al-Akhbar is one of the Lebanese newspapers. The chief editor is very close, is perceived as Hezbollah's mouthpiece, Ibrahim El-Amin, basically warning in his op-ed, in his editorial, warning from a scenario where the government of Lebanon, the Lebanese armed forces, will have to basically demilitarize South Lebanon. This triggers the history. 2008. To remind you, 2006, we ended the war with basically Resolution 1701 to demilitarize South Lebanon. 2008, there was a very strong push by Iran and Hezbollah to have a stronger chokehold, basically, on the Lebanese state. 2008, there was a confrontation between Hezbollah and the government. Hezbollah, for the first time, went out to the streets with their weapons to threaten the Lebanese security organizations, armed forces, and the Lebanese state. It ended with a defeat of the government when Hezbollah, basically in an agreement, gained basically a veto power in Lebanese politics. This op-ed today triggers the 2008 scenario. So that's the reason I'm saying that things are not as good as we would hope. There is a very important but that is also positive. The Abraham Accords in action. Israel is the one responsible for holding the stick and hitting Hezbollah and Iran, but also threatening the Syrian government from stepping in. Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, together with the United States, are now stepping in with the carrot in order to encourage, one, to support the Lebanese government financially, two, to encourage also the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad, to go back to the Arab camp away from the Iranians. So there is a whole strategy in which the Abraham Accords countries, Israel, the United States, Saudi Arabia, of course, and the Emirates are trying to solve this conflict regionally.
So you actually created three other questions in my head that I hadn't planned on. So let me go with one of them for a minute. I think there's a famous American proverb, he who laughs last, laughs hardest. We weren't laughing on October the 7th. because what we saw on October the 7th, in my estimation, was the dividend on terror investment from Iran through its proxies, where Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas all were wreaking havoc on Israel to the tune of 251 hostages, 1,300 murdered, and absolute chaos to the economy. You know, the greatest way to demonstrate that was on October 6th. If you walked down the Ben Gurion Airport, you saw the United Nations of airplanes. Today, you see one carrier, right? They knocked us back 3 decades. But now, Hamas has been decimated, just decimated. Their leader has been killed, and the person who rises up next in line seems to be targeted as well. The numbers of 40,000 were even admitted by Hamas to be at least 75% militant fighters. Then you have Hezbollah, which was the major investment by Iran, and they have been decimated. Nasrallah was killed, then Hashem was killed, and all of the next ones were taken out. They have lost 70% of their 100,000 stockpile. They've shot at least 10 to 15% of that 100,000 stockpile, and that investment from Iran seems to have been depleted. And we're not talking about a small investment. We're talking about multi-billion dollars that have been invested. And then Iran itself seems to have been embarrassed, especially in that last hit, which has just come to light, some of the things that we have taken out. So my question comes to you in terms of cancer. When we fight cancer, we rarely fight its metastases. We normally go to its core, where its root is. Why are we not putting more pressure on Iran? Why have we not done a full-throated attack of Iran? Because I do appreciate the fact that their 2 greatest investments over the last 20 years have been depleted in 1 year. They're over with no strength. We are getting that last laugh. But at the same time, they are still the greatest state sponsor of terror, and they seem to still have an ambition for nuclear weaponry that we have not curtailed.
I agree. 3 main, let's say, in the Iranian strategy, 3 main efforts. 1, to create this ring of fire and to use their proxies in the region. This is almost, again, was severely hit. 2, ballistic missile capabilities that we've seen their attack against Israel, and we're waiting for another attack to come in the coming period. The 3rd one is the nuclear. Now, the question is who is we? From the point of view of Israel, the main effort should be the nuclear capabilities, because this is going to be a game changer for the region. Here in the United States, there was less of an appetite to deal with this issue more aggressively, to impose new sanctions, even though I have to say, the Trump administration stepped out of the JCPOA, of the nuclear agreement with Iran. The Biden administration never went back in. So the sanctions are still there. There was a very strong effort by the Americans in the last year, in recent years, in a diplomatic effort through the IAEA and others to impose more and more difficulties and renew sanctions on the Iranians. What we need to do right now, first of all, the incoming administration has this mix, and maybe we can talk about it more. Has this mix between the isolationists, and the other group is the group that is very in line with the Israeli government's policies, and very critical and aggressive, with aggressive attitude towards Iran. There are some developments. So Elon Musk met the Iranian ambassador to the UN.
Which the ambassador denies, by the way.
The ambassador denies, everybody denies, but it seems that there was a meeting. Yeah. But at the same time, you have other statements coming from future officials in the next administration that Iran is going to be their main effort. They're not talking about attacking the nuclear facilities of Iran, but they're talking about the maximum pressure policy that Israel supports and want to be implemented. I think that you hear more and more, both in Israel and I think that also in the United States, the understanding, as you use the analogy of cancer, that there is a need to address Iran seriously. One, let's talk about the means. I think that one of the most immediate technical step that may happen is what is called a snapback. Part of the Security Council resolution in 2015 endorsing the Iran agreement also said that each and every member signatory to the agreement can basically snap back the sanctions unilaterally without any question. I know that there's a great effort, especially with the United Kingdom, to push them with this dramatic progress that the Iranians are doing, practically at a nuclear threshold state today, to snap back the sanctions and basically to bring again the policy of maximum pressure. Basically, the idea is to bring Iran back to its knees. The second being is the attack, a possible attack against the nuclear facility. Iran's. Can you hear me?
No, we're going to fix that. Hold on.
Sorry. Okay. Iran's nuclear facilities. This would require, first of all, an American leadership. Israel, I'm not sure that Israel can do it by itself, and hopefully an international coalition. The third thing that you hear more and more is the understanding that the main problem in the region is Iran, and the main problem in the region is the Iranian regime. The Iranian people are our friends, our allies, and there is a need, maybe, as difficult as it is, based on the history, to advance a policy of a regime change in Iran. You hear it more and more. I'm not sure that it's there, but you're going to hear about it more and more in the coming years.
Yeah, I actually think that would be the least messy plan. I don't know how you do that from within. I think we missed a moment during the Green Revolution, and I think if you had the chance to talk to President Obama, he would admit to missing that moment. But there were plenty of missed moments on that front. Let me change gears for a minute, okay? You had spoken just a few moments ago about the incredible fatigue that's happening on reservists in Israel. And in fact, for those of us, like we do in this synagogue, that list the names of all of those who were killed during the week, for those of us who follow it closely, you'll see that many of them fit a similar characteristic. One, they're not 19 and 20. Many of them are reservists in their late 20s, 30s, even 40s, with families. Secondly, it seems like there's a disproportionate amount of them that are religious, because these are some of the Dati Leumi, the national religious party, that are fighting fervently and dying. Which leads me to an important question. Yoav Gallant, which pretty amazingly was one of the most respected leaders in today's times in Israel because he has been honest in a government that is not widely trusted, was recently fired by Bibi Netanyahu. And if you ask him, he'll say 75% of the reason that I was fired was because I was insisting on Orthodox conscription in the Haredi world. My question to you, based on the amount of death that has occurring in the Dati Leumi world, which is close to the Orthodox world, and with the amount of taxation that has occurred in this war, of how many, not only the amount of people have died, the amount have been wounded, and the amount of resources it has taken on a community that people are going off to fight, are we going to see the needle move on this front? And even if they don't, even if the Haredi don't go off to war and they work in a 911 center where they're doing dispatch, or a food center, or they're ironing clothes, or other things that can happen that aren't necessarily the front lines, will we start to see this happen because of this war? Because let's be frank, on October 6th, there wasn't a major imperative to get them into the sources.
Short term, no. Long term, yes. Okay? Short term. Right now, let's talk about numbers. 794 IDF soldiers have been killed since October 7th. I cannot comprehend this number. You have more than 5,500 wounded. The IDF needs 7,500 new soldiers. Out of them, in the planning, the IDF is talking about 4,800 Haredis to be drafted to the IDF to cover for this gap. This current situation is unacceptable, but it is acceptable in this current political reality. So politically, the political setting in the Knesset, that basically, and the government that basically makes the decision and the policy, basically allows the Haredi parties and some of the leadership to veto a scenario in which Haredis are going to be drafted to the IDF. So this is the immediate term. Longer term, the political reality that I described here is the reality of yesterday. It's not the reality of post-October 7. And I truly believe in that what we're seeing today is not, especially in the context of the drafting of the Haredis to the IDF, but not only. Also, for example, in the context of advancing certain judicial policies by the government. What we're seeing is, this is basically the following in our social divide, our political divide. And I think that the divide today is no longer between right and left. For example, as you mentioned, people, voters for the religious Zionist parties that basically are right-wing voters are now very critical of the decisions and the behavior of the Haredi leadership. And I'm talking about the leadership. So what you're seeing is basically a divide between those who believe that we have a shared future in the state of Israel and those who believe that there is no real shared future. There is a future for different communities, but we are not one people, and we do not need to work as one people. You have more and more people who believe that this is what happened on October 7, that we are one people. It's no longer a question, this discussion on the drafting of the Haredis has been going on for years. It's no longer a question of fairness. It's a question of, are you committed to us? Is there arvut hadadit? Are you committed to our safety and our needs? Because we are willing to be committed to all of our needs together. There are a lot of discussions, a lot of initiatives about the future of Israel. You're more familiar with Jewish history than me. This is our third attempt in Jewish sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
The last two survived for how many? Not more than 80 years, right? Yeah. We're in the 76th year to the state of Israel. And there are many initiatives today in Israel discussing our ability to survive as a flourishing and strong country, strong society to our centennial, to our 100th year. You have different initiatives. They are talking with each other. By the way, some of them come also here. I'm in touch with many of them. You have groups like the Fourth Quarter. You have Eugene Kandel, who was the chair of Startup Nation Central, was here 2 weeks ago in meetings with Jewish leaders to talk about what are the ways in which the state of Israel, what has to change to allow us to survive, our bad experience in history and basically lead us to our 100th year of anniversary.
So let me ask this question to you. Speaking of, last laughs. A lot of us took incredible pride that Israel immediately sent over airplanes to Amsterdam after that pogrom on the streets. It was great. We have an Israel. We're going to go pick up our people. This is what we do. I thought it was horrific. Not that we went in to save our people, but the fact that the streets of Amsterdam were hunting Jews as they hunted us on October 7th is a scary moment. And of course, I'm in favor of saving the Jews, as we did. What I think should have happened is the Jews should have been saved by the Amsterdam police and the Amsterdam government officials. It wasn't our responsibility. It is our responsibility, ultimately, in the absence of others. And then you saw the soccer game in Paris this week, which had much more police, and the team making its way to the stadium had a longer entourage, motorcade, than the President of the United States. There are more police and SWAT teams than the President of the United States. And I don't know if that's something we should celebrate or something we should mourn. And I want to know what your views are on the future of Israelis and, by relationship, Jews, because I don't really think they cared about a difference in Western Europe.
So maybe, Rabbi Kirshner, what happened in Amsterdam reminded you of October 7th. Usually people mentioned what happened in Amsterdam in the context of Kristallnacht. But I agree with you because, and it's interesting, what happened in Amsterdam triggered our October 7th trauma. You could see in the public discourse in Israel, again, Jews and Israelis are being brutally targeted, humiliated. Everything is online, everything was recorded and documented. It brought us back our trauma from October 7th. You could see it actually, for example, for the first time, as far as I remember, live TV coverage in the middle of the night, 4 a.m. Live news in Israel covering this pogrom in Amsterdam. The whole discussion about sending the IDF. This is part of our trauma. This is part of our October 7th trauma. We usually say that this current war is a war Israel is fighting in 7 fronts, but I think that we need to add one more front. And I agree with you that it's not only Israelis. We're fighting another front, us as a people. Just as Americans felt or were affected also by what happened in Israel on October 7th, it goes both ways. And as one people, we experience anti-Semitism on campus here, the streets of Europe. There is simply a failure of leadership. This is it. Because what is right and what is wrong is very clear. But the leaders need to remind their people what is the right thing to do and what is wrong.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that it is a scary moment. It was a scary moment, and I'm afraid of what else could come. I have the easiest question for you. It's a layup. Will take you 3 seconds to answer for the last question, because I'm looking at the clock and some eager kids coming in for their book ceremony. And that question is, how will we feel a significant difference between a future Trump administration versus a current Biden administration? Should be an easy answer.
It's an easy answer, okay. Okay, let's start with President Biden is a great, great friend of the state of Israel. And as he described only this week during his meeting with President Herzog, a true Zionist. And we're grateful for his and the administration's support throughout this period. President Trump is another great friend of the state of Israel, with a record when it comes to the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the embassy, Golan Heights, and of course the Abraham Accords. We have both administrations have faced Biden faced pressure from within his own party. Potentially also Trump could face pressure from within his own party from those who are isolationists and would not necessarily support such a close relationship, or let's say such a close commitment to causes that are not related directly to the United States. I think that maybe we should talk about two things. that we are going to see in the coming administration. First of all, Trump appointed, at least on certain positions that are critical for Israel, appointed people who are not only friends of Israel and committed to Israel, but they're like-minded of this current government.
That's right.
In Israel. So this is one thing. But I want to mention two, let's say, topics that you're going to hear about it and are going to cause, let's say, are not necessarily bipartisan in nature here in the United States. One is the return of Russia. Trump is probably going to advance a much more warm relationship with Putin. Why am I mentioning it? Because it's also related to our needs,
in Syria and Iran.
especially in Syria and Iran. It seems that there are already discussions about the future, by the way, bringing also Russia in as a player in Syria in order to basically push or make sure that the Syrian government is staying away from the Iranian government and does not allow the rearming of Hezbollah. So it seems that, at least in the Israeli perception, Russia has an important role to play. Of course, in the context of Ukraine, in the context of American politics, it's going to be more complicated. The second thing is the MOU. Throughout this year, there were strong calls to basically stop the military aid to Israel, not only.
There's a bill in Congress that's being presented, I think today, sponsored by Bernie Sanders in the Senate to do the very same thing. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, but this is it. We are, as going back to history, 2016, President Obama signed the MOU with Israel for a period of 10 years, basically allocating $33 billion for Israeli aid. It's basically Israel can buy US weapons, US manufactured weapons and weapon systems, the amount of for 10 years and the amount of $33 billion. There was an additional $5 billion for collaboration on missile defense and Iron Dome. It expires in a year and a half. And here, again, in the context of everything that we've discussed, the need for Israel to basically purchase more and new weapons, and also in the context of the political discussion in Israel, I think that this is something that you're going to hear a lot about. I think that there's also going to be a lot of pushback from those who are calling, like Senator Sanders, to stop and to ban arms sales to Israel. It's going to be interesting.
So I spoke about the last laugh. I'm going to take the last word on this. Two last words. The first is, Bernie Sanders seems to enjoy, as many senators do, a lot of virtue signaling and pushing this virtue of let's not send aid to Israel. But Bernie Sanders should know, as one of the longest-serving senators in the United States Senate, that of that $3.5 billion a year that goes to Israel, $3.2 billion of that, 3.2, that's the overwhelming majority of that, is jobs in America, manufactured jobs in America. If that MOU were to cease tomorrow, if Bernie Sanders were to be successful, $3.2 billion worth of jobs would stop in America. How interesting for a man who wants to encourage workforce in America.
A year.
Per year, thank you. Per year. Yeah. So for all those people trying to stop aid, what they're really hurting more than anything else, besides protecting the sovereign nation, is hurting jobs in Israel. So that's my 2 cents on this matter. My last 2 cents is just to thank you. Yisrael, you are a brilliant mind, you are a passionate thinker, and you are someone who is committed, like all of us, to the future of Israel. We thank you for your leadership and hope you know that you will come back here many, many more times as a Ben Bait, and it's an honor to have you, and may you go from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Kirshner. Thank you, all of you.